Do you want to make lots of gold for Wrath of the Lich King Classic? Well, GDKPs could solve all of your gold issues.
You are not prepared!
What's up, pumpers? Jerome here, and today we're talking everything GDKPs. We're going to talk about what they are, how to get into them, and all the secrets to get the absolute most out of your runs. Alright, so to start off, let's explain what a GDKP is. A GDKP is simply a gold DKP system, meaning that you bid on items with gold, and then the gold is put into a pot. At the end of the run, everybody gets a cut of that pot. The big advantage here, of course, being that even if you don't get any items, you still walk out with a hefty sum of gold. In a typical soft res run or a main spec over off spec run, you might go into a raid and spend 2 or 3 hours and walk out completely empty handed. When it comes to getting something for your time, GDKPs are simply the best system. If you have a lot of gold, you can gear up a new alt very quickly. Meanwhile, if you don't have any gold at all, you can use the GDKPs to make extra gold from those other players. One thing to note is that there will be different cuts given out from the pot to players based on how their performance is or their role. So usually the tanks get a larger cut, the organizer might take between 5 and 10%, and there's sometimes a bonus incentive, say for top heals or the top dispels in the raid or the top kicks. There's a lot of variation in GDKPs. Some are very fair and honest, while others not so much. So you understand the basics of GDKPs, but why are they taking over the game? Why is it that practically every run you see is a GDKP? Well, it's simple. You simply get more for your time from doing a GDKP. Whether you're preparing for Wrath of the Lich King Classic or just gearing up new characters, GDKPs solve a lot of fundamental issues in the game. If you need gear fast or you need gold fast, there really isn't a better way than GDKPs. Now that we've explained the basics, it's time to talk about gold. How much gold should you expect to make in a typical GDKP? GDKP pots will vary widely based on the raid tier you're in. For example, if you're doing a Gruels, you'll expect to see a much smaller pot than if you're doing, for example, a Black Temple or a Sunwell. Typically, a current raid tier GDKP in the Burning Crusade could net you anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 gold. Meanwhile, older content like Serpent Shrine Cavern and Tempest Keep might only net you between 500 to 1,000 gold. It really depends on what drops and who's willing to pay for it. At this point, you're probably wondering, how much gear do I need to get into a GDKP? Naturally, you wouldn't assume you need best in slot gear since people are buying gear, right? How much gear you need will depend on your role in the GDKP. There are multiple roles in GDKPs. There's the carry, there's the organizer, there's the buyer, and then there's also the hybrid. A carry can be a DPS, they can be a tank, they can be a healer, but ultimately their role is to be there to ensure the raid goes smoothly. Think of the carries almost like chaperones. They're there to make sure nobody gets into too much trouble. You don't want to be wiping on a boss for 4 hours. If you have best in slot gear on a character already, this is your role. You can go into groups with your BIS gear and carry GDKPs all day and night, and frankly, if you're already maxed out, this is the single best thing you could be doing on your characters right now. Buyers, on the other hand, don't have BIS gear. They may have close to BIS gear, they may have okay gear, or basically no gear at all. Some buyers aren't even max level. Typically, buyers are expected to have a lot of gold. But here's the secret about GDKPs. If you have some gold and you're looking to go as a buyer, people will often be happy to have you. So much of the loot in SSC and TK and Gruels and Magtheridon and Karazhan, it's all wasted. But here's a big thing about GDKPs. Buyers are hard to come by. If you can do a couple of easier GDKPs, say a Gruel, say a Magtheridon, you can get into these SSCs, these TKs, and start cleaning up. Buyers are difficult to find, and groups will be hard-pressed to turn you away. The third option in a GDKP is to go as a hybrid. A hybrid is both a buyer and a carry at the same time. You're expected to perform pretty well and also buy maybe 1 or 2 items if they come your way. Going to GDKPs as a hybrid buyer carry is really awesome because you're not feeling super pressured to buy anything, but you also don't feel like you have to top the meters just to keep your spot. If you want to go as a hybrid or as a buyer that doesn't have a lot of gold, you'll definitely want to have a bunch of these easier to get epics, and I would definitely recommend doing some normal runs first, maybe 1 or 2 caravans to pick up some loot. Unless you're insanely deep pocketed, I wouldn't recommend going into GDKPs with any green or blue gear. So now you know all about the basics of GDKPs, but here's the big question: where do you find them? The first way to find GDKPs would be to use an add-on like Puggle or LFG Group Bulletin Board. If you put in the keyword GDKP and join the Looking for Group channel, you can sit back as those groups come flooding in. The second way to find GDKPs is my far preferred method, which is Discord. On our server, which is Fairlina, we have an enormous Discord community where everybody posts their GDKP events every single day. An example of a Discord community with all of these GDKPs being posted is the Stacks Discord. If your server doesn't have a big community Discord posting all these events, you can always slowly accumulate Discords over time. Amassing a list of GDKPs you can go back to every single week is a really smart idea. One common rule for GDKPs is that there will be a minimum bid for items based on which raid you're in. For example, if you're in a current raid tier, you might expect to pay 1,000 gold per item, while if you're in an older raid tier, the minimum might only be 100 gold. If those minimums aren't set up, then somebody could go in and scoop up, say, 5 pieces of gear and pay nothing for them, and then everybody else is left holding the bag. Before we get to all those GDKP secrets, please give the video a like. I am pumping out a lot of quality content here, getting prepped up for Wrath. I want you to be pumping Wrath as hard as possible. And while you're at it, please click that notification bell. You'll be notified when the next video is uploaded so you can keep pumping like a gas station. Alright, so now it's time to cover some GDKP tips and tricks. The first trick to GDKPs is to buy stuff. So many people go to GDKPs just to make gold, and that's perfectly understandable. By buying stuff, you'll immediately stick out as somebody that people want to invite back. If you can manage to get into a GDKP with even just 1,000 or 2,000 gold, you can go and bid on practically every item you want. Just the act of bidding on the items will increase the overall pot, as people will have to outbid you to win the item. This shows that you're actually involved in the process and you really do want to win the items. On the off chance you don't get outbid on, say, a tier piece, you can walk home with a very cheap upgrade. There are plenty of tricks you can do to look like a bigger buyer. For example, you can bid slightly lower than somebody right at the exact same time that they put in their bid. That kind of trick will work once or twice, but the even easier option is to just snag up those cheap items, and over time you'll make even more gold from the pot anyways. The next GDKP tip is to perform well. Understand what metrics a typical raid leader will be looking at. They'll look at the parses, they'll look at the DPS done, the healing done, they'll look at the number of deaths, they might look at the amount of mana pots used, for example, if your healers were having some issues. The important thing is to do your role to the best of your ability. Try to really ramp up those numbers so that people will want to invite you back. Another thing that I've found works really well is genuinely being happy to be there. If you're excited and happy to be in a GDKP, everybody else is going to be excited and happy as well, and that'll make the run smoother. The raid leader is definitely going to notice this. Usually the raid leader is very stressed out. They're working on their spreadsheets, they're working on filling the group and getting those assignments done. If you can help to keep the morale up, the raid leader is going to love you and want to invite you back. Conversely, if you cause any problems whatsoever, that's going to be a huge red flag to getting invited back again. Whether you cause a raid wipe or you're arguing with someone in the group, you really want to keep situations like that to an absolute minimum. The last tip that I have is to get some dang alts. Alts are so good for GDKPs. I have a Resto Druid in a progression raid, and I have a Holy Priest that just exists to make gold. Having an alt for GDKPs feels so good. You can go in whenever you want, make amazing gold, get items anytime you want. GDKPs are so great on alts, and I recommend that you make a few alts just to do extra GDKPs. Okay, so we should be all set on GDKPs now. Hopefully you're inspired to go out there and make some amazing gold, get some best in slot loot. I personally think GDKPs are the best way to prepare for Wrath of the Lich King Classic, so I'm doing them as much as I can. I want to know in the comments below your thoughts on GDKPs. What do you think about the GDKP loot system? Is it fair? Is it biased unfairly towards people with gold? I want to know your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and remember to have a great day. If you liked this video, make sure to check out my Wrath of the Lich King Classic Top 15 DPS Guide. I'm counting down from 15 to 1 to figure out the absolute best pumper in Wrath of the Lich King, and you need to check it out.